We are.
It's Faces of Stone. Welcome
Faces of Stone
to yet another episode where we pick up the chronology of the episodic Skywalker saga. We're on episode 7. We made it to episode 7. We got through the prequels. We got through the original trilogy. We
got
stopped along the way
special
to talk about other things. And now here we are in the current and still, as of this date, incomplete final sequel trilogy. I'm Noah Diamond, and I'd like to introduce you to my co-panelists. Born on a mountaintop in Tennessee with a banjo on her knee, she's the president for me, the leader of the free world, Amanda Sisk.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Born in a log cabin he built himself with a banjo on the shelf, being played by an elf, the freer of the lead world, Mr. Marc-Anthony Macon.
Glad to be here and not making cookies.
All right, then. So, after a very long time where it didn't seem like there were going to be any more Star Wars movies, and maybe most of the world even kind of felt okay about that, Disney purchased Lucasfilm, or more accurately, George Lucas decided to sell Lucasfilm to Disney for $800 billion kajillion dollars. And it was quickly announced that under the auspices of Kathleen Kennedy as producer, there were going to be 50 new Star Wars movies every second. And the first fruit of that transaction was Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, which is still such a recent movie. 2015 was only 4 years ago, remarkable. Really just happened.
Who were not born then.
True.
There are people who were not born when this episode of Faces of Stone began.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Think about that. Take that to the bank and smoke it.
Shove it.
So, shove the bank. So, the idea that there would ever be a sequel to Return of the Jedi, that end of the story would ever continue, always seemed vanishingly unlikely, even back when George Lucas was occasionally talking about it. He always seemed very half-hearted about it. And then when it was reported that along with the sale of Lucasfilm, George Lucas had these conversations with Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford, in which he told them personally, you know, I'm selling to Disney. They're going to make new movies. They're going to ask you to be in them. And, you know, you can take it or leave it. To me, the news that there was going to be a Star Wars Episode 7 was like very big, unexpected, exciting, and slightly concerning news. And also but the fact that those three were going to reprise their roles, that meant that there was not going to be an option to just tune all of this out, you know, like their presence sanctified the whole project right from the beginning. And I was going to show up for it, even if, yeah.
You forgot Coop's tail making
Coop.
an appearance here.
Hey,
This is actually just elaborate puppetry.
It's very impressive.
well, we know your first passion is puppetry.
It's true. I've got.
I like the return to practical effects.
My pediatric days.
I want to go through the movie a little bit, and we'll talk about specific things in it. Part of the, I think like it or not, the main thing about this movie is it's a vast system of references and, you know, deliberately struck chords.
Right.
And so we'll examine all of them until we ourselves are sick of it. But first, let's just do a little overview. Maybe we could all just give our general impressions, how we felt going into this for the first time, when you first saw Force Awakens, what your expectations were like, and how it met them or didn't meet them, and what you thought and have thought about the movie. You want to get that ball rolling, Marc-Anthony?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think I went into this one with a fair amount of trepidation. You know, let's say like cautiously optimistic, maybe not even optimistic, maybe cautiously not pessimistic, but not quite, you know.
Was your lack of optimism, did it have to do with Disney?
It had nothing to do with, I kind of felt like Disney while I could see them doing something with Star Wars I didn't like, they generally do work that is at least competent. And I didn't see them doing anything terrible. I was concerned about J.J. Abrams just because I had never liked anything I'd seen by him. So that was really my concern, especially because I hated what he did to Star Trek. It hurt to watch those movies. And so I was kind of like, now I just feel like he's going to pee on my favorite thing ever. And I remember him saying something like, you know, he was doing the second Star Trek movie, and he was like, oh, Star Trek's just too cerebral for me, so I can't wait to get onto Star Wars. And I was like, you motherfucker. So I went into it a little angry, I think. And I came out of the first viewing feeling like I was happy that I actually enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I really didn't absolutely hate it. And I found that I genuinely enjoyed myself enough to not be angry at J.J. Abrams for being on Star Wars. Since then, my opinion has changed, you know, as I've repeated viewings have changed my opinion of it a bit.
And now, how about you, Amanda Sisk? Describe your before and after feelings about this movie.
Well, you can probably correct me, or definitely correct me, because I don't remember. I think I didn't read anything or hear anything about it first, and I wouldn't let you tell me anything about it, probably, because that's generally the way I am. And I think I was, of course, typical. I mean, I was upset or scared because of the prequels. You know, and I know that they knew what kind of mistakes they'd made and they might change it, but what if they didn't? And what if it just disappointed me that much? And that was going to be end cap. And, you know, we have something in the middle that's brilliant, but, so I don't remember, I remember going in to see it and remember loving how many little girls had their hair like Rey's. Or I guess, no, that was the second, no, but anyway, all the little girls were going to see it, and it, that made me happy, but I don't remember how I felt coming out of it. I think I really liked it. But Noah, do you remember how I came out of it?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I can include your reaction in mine. We saw it together, of course. And yeah, I mean, I think we were both pretty just wowed by it. You know, I mean, repeated viewings have, I think, deepened some of the things that I thought were good about it, and also exposed some weaknesses in it that, you know, that are undeniable. But mostly, you know, I had a great experience with it. I mean, I think we saw it a second time very quickly. We were so eager to go back and go through it all again. Yeah, I had a positive reaction to it. I was quite thrilled with it, actually, on first viewing. And, you know, it was, among other things, just a movie that had an almost impossibly high bar to meet. It had the potential to disappoint and upset so many people on such a massive scale. And the fact that it did pretty well, I don't mean at the box office, although obviously it did, but I mean, I think it did an honorable job with an extremely delicate and fraught assignment. I think it delivered a great deal of what lots of different kinds of people and parties wanted from it. I think it's quite good, and it almost had no business being as good as it is. Certainly just before it was released, you know, just the idea that it was coming was really quite something. I also, this may have something to do with being a little older, like, you know, we now can sort of analyze our own personal feelings about anticipating and then experiencing new Star Wars movies as children, as kind of, you know, young adults making the transition from adolescence, really. And now there's no way around it, folks. We're grown-ups. And now we're experiencing...
You don't need to say it out loud like that.
It's okay. Yes, last night Noah had to tell me I was a year older than I thought I was. Like, I really didn't know. And I said, wait a minute. And he told me, no, you said it wrong. You're actually a year older.
Oh,
That's what happens when this starts to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speak up, young fella.
Well, something I do want to say is, and this is, you're going to think I'm joking. You're going to think I'm kidding or making fun of people. I'm not. I want to talk about the hero's journey a little bit.
Okay.
So in this last part, the hero's journey is presumably Rey, the reluctant hero. She doesn't want to leave. She does. Something makes her go. Middle three, we're going to say that's Luke's Luke is the, hero. So what's the hero's journey in 1 through 3?
Anakin.
Is it Anakin? And
yeah, and I think the idea is that he's missing all of the right turns, and Luke makes better choices than he does along that similar path.
so like
And then hopefully Rey will make better choices than Luke.
Kylo could also be taking a hero's journey as well, then.
Yeah. You could see it that way, sure.
Regarding the prequels, I think in terms of the way it felt building up to the opening of episode 7, one thing I sort of didn't like about that period was it seemed like in the way people spoke in the media and in conversation about the anticipation of episode 7 and the way people talked about it after it was released, it was like never miss an opportunity to trash the prequels.
Yeah.
And I always kind of resented a little bit. I mean, I think I'm pretty aware of what the flaws are in the prequels, but I also think that on the premise that a Star Wars movie that has some flaws in it has somehow betrayed you personally, people exaggerated those flaws to make the prequels seem like this horrific debacle that they just weren't, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who saw them once when they first came out and didn't like them have used them as some kind of yardstick for disappointing mediocrities, and they just don't deserve that. I just think that they deserve a little better than that. And I thought you're not really saying anything so great about episode 7 or the people involved in it if the good things that you have to say with it are all in the context of how much you didn't like episodes 1, 2, and 3.
I agree. And I just have I really don't like negative criticism when it overstays its welcome, and it certainly has with this. It just gets to the point where a lot of people worked on those movies and put their whole hearts into them. Can you just stop it? They've been out for years. You don't need to keep repeating it. And it almost just makes you look bad that you've really got to remind everyone. But by the way, I don't like these movies.
Didn't we read about a man who said they were talking to different people, and the man said, what order would you show it in? And he said, my children know there are 3 Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And
what made me really mad was when those movies were out, when the trilogy was out, there were kids that wanted to play with Star Wars toys and wanted to watch Star Wars and talk about Star Wars, and their parents were like, no, those are bad Star Wars movies. These are the Star Wars movies you like. And it was silly. Just like, that's what a lot of our parents did when we were kids, was like, you love these stupid space movies? Stop watching those dumb movies. And a lot of the older kids, too, were making fun of Star Wars fans. It's like, why are you actually trying to dissuade some kids from liking Star Wars? Are you kidding me?
Part of the reason is because our grandparents were like, the Lone Ranger, what's your problem? That's not worth your time. And it is partly built into the dynamic of childhood and adulthood.
Yeah.
But I do think, I do question how deeply, how thoughtful a Star Wars fan you really are if upon hearing that there was going to be an episode 7, your first thought was, I hope Jar Jar dies. Come on, just what's your problem? Regarding somebody else with the same initials, or the same first 2 initials, J.J. Abrams.
Jar Jar Abrams, wow.
Jar Jar Abrams, yeah.
I never thought about that.
I'm not particularly a fan of his, nor am I a, detractor. I thought that his first Star Trek movie, I didn't see the second one. I thought that movie was, although very nicely cast and acted.
The cast is great, yeah.
Really good cast, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But my feeling about it was that it was exciting and nicely done, very competent, slick piece of intellectual property, but that it missed, as you said, Marc-Anthony, it misses the point of Star Trek and drains all this sort of philosophical and social commentary in it out of it and turns it into a kind of space opera. In other words, makes it more like Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars has its own depth, but its depth it's different. Its depth has more to do with the way it resonates with ancient themes deeply buried in our collective
unconscious. With that Star Trek movie, it seemed like J.J. Abrams had interviewed some people that had heard about Star Trek and then made a movie based on that. It's like Kirk is a womanizer, you're gonna end this thing, and then you got Bones.
Well, they had the stock characters, and they.
Yeah, it really. But anyway, I felt like
for all those
did do a much better job with Star Wars, and maybe that is because it is more beloved to him than Star Trek.
And of course, there's the brilliant Galaxy Quest is all brilliant, but when Sigourney Weaver, they say, "What's your job?" and she says, "I repeat what the computer says."
I got one job on this ship. It's stupid, but I'm going to do it.
Yes. And also, this particular movie reminds me of, we shouldn't have to do this, but
there's a kid in my class that I call Sigourney because he just repeats things everyone says sometimes.
That's hilarious.
Like, you're Sigourney
hilarious.
Today.
All right.
I should be calling him the name of that character, but I couldn't remember it in time.
I can't either. I mean,
so because of all that, I thought there was a fair chance that Abrams, maybe he is the right director for Star Wars. Like, maybe Star Wars doesn't need a rethinking, and the idea was actually not, it was not a reboot, although people described it that way. It was a straightforward sequel to the last episode in the sequence. And, J.K. Abrams, maybe what Star Wars really needs is a competent craftsman who's good at following in other people's footsteps and honoring what was done before. I thought there was a good chance he would do well by it, and I think he did.
I think it's more than I could have hoped for, so I can't really complain too much, but I think it is still my least favorite Star Wars movie.
Really?
And I really don't like saying that because there are things about it that I love, and Rey is primarily, she's the big thing there that I really love about this movie. Mm-hmm. And really, I like all of the characters.
All the characters good. They're strong.
I feel like my biggest complaint here is that I really just feel like it looks like a reboot, despite the fact that, as Noah just said, it is definitely a continuation of the story, and I'm glad that it is. But the way that it's visually designed is so rebooty.
Do you think that's intentional, though, so that she's...
I'm sure it is. I think it exactly, and that it might have been necessary to get a lot of the butthurt fans back on board after the prequels, and maybe that's what needed to happen. But for me, it felt really kind of wincingly fan servicey, and in an awkward way. Like, for example, we have Rey starting off on a desert planet that is not Tatooine, with creatures that are Jawa-like but not Jawas. And you don't see any familiar Star Wars anything, but things that look kind of like very specific other Star Wars things, but are not quite those things.
Right, until she runs into R2-D2, or BB-8.
Who, again, is...
It really does not look like Star Wars.
And you know what? I'm just going to say it, and I don't mean this as an insult. I am just going to say it. R2-D2 is to Grover what BB-8 is to Elmo.
That's a good comparison.
I think R2-D2...
And I say this as someone that also loves Elmo. I just feel like, BB-8 was brought in here, and I do think he's cute, and I love him, but poor R2-D2 has had 3 lines in this new trilogy, you know?
I don't think you're right. I think it's less harsh than that. I think R2-D2 is Scooby-Doo, and BB-8 is Scrappy-Doo. I think there's not that much difference between them.
Okay, but I think that's just as insulting as over and, is this?
I think it's better. It's softer. I don't know.
Is it? It depends on how much you hate Scrappy versus how much you hate Elmo. But I really love BB-8. I just feel like, well, was R2 not enough for you?
I think BB-8 is a remarkable character, and
he's adorable, and I don't blame him. I don't.
And he is also the first character we meet in The Force Awakens, and that very much, like so much about this movie, rhymes with meeting the droids first in Episode 4, and also the fact that BB-8 operates in the plot line as the vessel of an important piece of information that's needed to advance the cause of the resistance. I don't have much to criticize about BB-8, and I think that the early stretch of the movie, I'm not sure I agree that it feels off-brand. I mean, I think the question of how to account for this vast time gap between episode 6 and episode 7, I don't know, it feels to me like the attempt anyway was to figure out how all these designs would have evolved over the decades between the two films. It's not unlike what we see in the prequels, the way the design that is so pristine and majestic in the prequels is decrepit and scuffed up in the original trilogy. Early on in the film too, there's all these kind of familiar sounding and looking Star Wars incidents, familiar lines like "We got company." We hear that very early. Poe says it to.
He says it twice.
We got company. Yeah. Giving
one more time, and it's a Sondheim lyric. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a mashup that should happen.
Company. We've got company.
Stormtroopers, the Stormtroopers it's yet another iteration of the familiar Stormtrooper look.
Right. I just want to interject while we're talking about Stormtroopers nerdily that this is, it's very clearly announced here that these are not clones.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Which, apparently, according to canon, clones are not used as of A New Hope. Those are all actually conscripted or something like that. But this is announced here. It's the first time in a movie where we're told these are not clones.
Yeah, which is
and
interesting.
That's clearly necessary for Finn to, because
right.
He does. He looks a little like Jango Fett, but not enough.
Not a lot. I mean.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't buy it.
Probably tell the difference if you put them in one room together. Probably.
When we get to Jakku, I mean, I do agree that it I think on first viewing and perhaps subsequent viewings too, it does seem a little like, well, we want it to be Tatooine, but it'll be a different desert planet. I don't know. I did find it a little like, oh, you want to do those iconic Star Wars shots in the desert, but it can't actually be Tatooine. That might be a little contrived. It
just seems like off-brand butter, Like,
I love the way I found it very beautiful and
like
moving.
Lando Larks, I just.
The way the landscape is strewn with the wreckage of original trilogy machinery.
Yes, and I do.
To me, that seems very sort of beautiful and profound. Like
it also shows us the scale. Like we never really thought about how big is a Star Destroyer compared to a person.
Yeah. Yes, and also that it has this oddly familiar. What we're looking at is a bedroom floor strewn with broken Star Wars toys, There's something sort of lovely about that, and Rey sitting in the shadow of the AT-AT's foot.
So just a couple little notes here. So the AT-AT's foot, where she puts on that helmet, in Arabesh written on the helmet is the name Rey. So there could be speculation that she didn't have a name or wasn't given a name necessarily, and she just kind of took the name she found on this helmet while she was fantasizing about, having a life.
Experience.
Interesting.
Also, the Battle of Jakku that created all of that wreckage was kind of, I forget all the details, but it was more or less part of the Emperor's Operation Cinder final thrust thing that, if I should die, this is what you're supposed to do, and it failed, and
so that's why there's so much wreckage.
The final nail in the coffin of the Empire was at the Battle of Jakku.
Where did you find the information that it has Rey written on it?
I completely forget. I read this long ago.
Kylo Ren and Poe. So the First Order arrives, and Max von Sydow plays this character who is sort of feels very much like an Obi-Wan in Episode 4 type figure, but he's really a resistance military leader. We sort of sense a vast backstory here that we don't really know about. He has a history with Leia. So when Kylo Ren arrives and he and Poe have their confrontation, it's the first moment of humor in the movie and the first sign telling us very early on that we're going to have that kind of thing again. And that is...
And it's great. It works really well.
Who talks first? I talk first. You talk first.
Yeah.
Oscar
I
Isaac
think everyone in the audience breathed a sigh of relief when that happened. That humor was attempted. Humor was successful. Moving on.
We have this guy. He's going to do this. He's going to serve this purpose. And that's
right.
Because we know
we've got it. We're fine. We have our Han. Okay.
Yeah. And not just humor, but that specific... What was that?
He's really cute.
He is cute guy.
Okay.
But not just humor, but let me just finish this point. Not just humor, but the specific kind of humor that undercuts the grandiosity of what's happening. There's humor in the prequels too, but it's a different kind of comic relief. This is specifically what we need: sarcasm, irony.
Right. Yes. Okay, so Diego, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say Diego Luna or Oscar Isaac. It was not really a big thing. I was just going to ask the question, but it's fine. We can move on.
I say Oscar Isaac myself.
I think I do too. Yep.
I don't know. I'll take them both.
How about Ray's hair? You were talking about little girls, seeing little girls doing their hair like Ray. Those 3 little buns in the back. I mean, it's like, that's another, to me, very smart. It's a new, iconic, unusual, recognizable Star Wars hairstyle, just like Episode 4. You know, I don't think I've seen this mentioned anywhere, but it's not hard to take Finn's name as a reference to Huckleberry Finn, also an accidental hero who kind of has this journey where he's struggling against a socially imposed oppressive order and takes matters into his own hands and becomes involved in other people's fight for freedom. Have you encountered that anywhere, or is it just so obvious nobody talks about it?
I've never really encountered that anywhere, really. No.
Shortly after we meet Finn, or FN2187, we meet Commander Hawks, which makes me think, are we supposed to read?
Isn't 2187,
Hawks?
I think 2187 is the cell that Princess Leia was kept in on the Death Star.
Oh, I thought it was 1138.
No.
Is that something, a different reference?
It might be 2186.
Wait.
No, 1138 is cell block 1138.
Oh, that's
but
it.
Her
okay.
cell is 2187 or 2186.
Oh. It wouldn't surprise me.
And the garbage matcher is 3263827.
Well, let me write that down.
So we know how to turn it off. I'm looking stuff up. I can't find anything I'm looking up, but J.J. Abrams is only 5'7".
Oh, I'm taller.
Yes, you're tall. I'm almost taller, but
I think the landing of Finn on Jakku, I think this is the first time we've ever gotten a look at what's under Stormtrooper's armor.
Yes, and
basically a black sweatsuit.
Well, what I said to you when we saw it was, there's no way that they're wearing such loose-fitting clothing underneath that armor. Because like on the elbows and everything, it's really tight. And then Finn takes off his thing and he's like in a sweatshirt and sweatpants. It would be more like a cat suit, I think.
They actually, no, it's just a kind of an aerosol spray paint of black. And then you just rinse it. You've got this solvent that's in a pouch and you just rinse it off.
And on your birthday, they give you a special little something on your chest.
It's
nice. I mean, being a stormtrooper's not that bad.
No, it's got its perks.
You get a spray tan every day. Yeah, so no, I think that, you know, you don't want to see a character walking around in skin tight whatevers, unless it's a woman, of course, and you get the red pants, but that Noah loves so much.
Oh, in episode 2, yeah.
Because of your eyes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know what it is about her. I just so the First Order is pursuing this droid, and Kylo Ren at one point says to Hawks, he says, I want that map. For your sake, I suggest you get it. Again, for your sake. You know, it makes you think of Vader, as perhaps does the black mask and modified speaking voice.
It is a little reminiscent of Vader, is it not?
I wonder if he knows that.
Which is justified in the story by making Kylo Ren idolize and emulate Vader.
Yes.
You know,
which was a great decision. Although, you know, I guess we don't know all the rules about Force Ghosts, but you would think Anakin can show up and be like, all right, Jesus.
You might have to be open enough.
You know, like, I made this mistake. What are you looking at? Don't look up to me.
Yeah,
the only good thing I've done in 20 years is let my son burn me while teddy bears had a party.
But who are you going to look up to if your mentor, you wake up and your mentor's about to kill you?
But he had already been hanging out with Snoke at that point.
I guess so. Well, so Anakin had been hanging out with Palpatine before he went.
Yeah, that's right.
Good point.
So, I mean, Snoke looks kind of more evil than Palpatine did until he got his unlimited power.
Yeah, that really fries your face. It's bad for your skin, unlimited power.
It's like,
Power, you've got to really
it's like the witch in Into the Woods.
Mm-hmm.
You can be beautiful or you can be powerful.
When Rey meets Finn, there's I think a line that has become important in Star Wars and in the culture surrounding it, and evidence of the ongoing inevitable cultural relevance of Star Wars. The Force Awakens came out in 2015, which was a very different world in some significant ways. But in the years since The Force Awakens came out, the line that we first hear in this scene from Finn, "I'm with the Resistance," has been widely adopted by the resistance against the Donald Trump presidency, even though it predates, Trump's, even his nomination. But there's an example of how, like, if you put Star Wars out into the world, it's going to resonate with what's happening in the world. And, those, particularly in the immediate aftermath of the 2016 election, those "I'm with the Resistance" pins and other forms of apparel and hard goods in a recognizable Star Wars font were ubiquitous at political rallies and protests.
So you might say he was lying.
Yeah,
and
he was
a laugh line. That's what I'm with. I'm with the Resistance.
I'm with the Resistance.
Not telling the truth, and it's for a laugh. So it's kind of like when people quote Polonius, and he's just giving bad advice, but everybody thinks it's good, like to thine own self be true and all that stuff. Anyway, Same thing.
Yeah.
They're using this thing, but he's actually, I mean, it's great. It's great that people are using it, but it's not intended to be that kind of line.
Well, this is the first time we hear it, but throughout these two films, and I assume the third one too, I like identifying oneself with the Resistance. It happens, a lot and often more sincerely, but you're right. In this moment, he is basically trying to impress a girl. I love in these early scenes too, and I agree with you, Marc-Anthony, that the character of Rey and what Daisy Ridley does with that character is as significant as any other element of all this in terms of making it work. As written, Rey is great. I particularly like how Finn is always doing these sort of classic Hollywood taking care of the girl things, like, and she is always saying, "Stop taking my hand." Yeah. And he keeps saying, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Yeah.
It's beautifully done.
I mean, both of them they play off of each other really well. Their scenes are fun. And it's nice. I just remember watching it and thinking, when we would play Star Wars as kids in the neighborhood, if there was more than one girl playing with you, she was Aunt Beru.
Oh.
Until Return of the Jedi, when she could be Mon Mothma, and then what did she really get to do?
Stand there.
It was nice, to know. And then I remember seeing commercials for, with like girls, either little girls dressed up as Rey or in X-Wing fighter pilot gear, having adventures, and that made me really happy that, like girls got to see themselves on the screen in a Star Wars movie wielding a lightsaber. That was
being a badass without some guy doing it for her.
Right.
Great.
It's a revolutionary character.
There was no, while there were like kind of like just teases in this direction, there was nothing to the effect of, and girls can do it just as good as guys.
Right, no.
Like she just did what she had to do.
And it was
it's
just
not patronizing.
Like, the lead character. This is the lead character. It's fine. It wasn't like a female lead character.
It's not patronizing, and then in addition to the conception of the character being right on the mark, although John Boyega and everyone in this cast is excellent, Daisy Ridley is, I think, particularly miraculous as a piece of casting. Partly her, like Mark Hamill in episode 4, she's she was an unknown quantity, a new face. There's some indescribable Star Warsiness that some actors have in these movies, and she really has it. I suppose it's just that the Force is strong with her. Interestingly, we don't need to go on too much of a Hans Christian Andersen detour, but I do think Hayden Christensen had this quality, and what works about his performances in episodes 2 and 3 is that, and even the shortcomings that one might find in some of his work, particularly in episode 2, he is Star Warsy, and I think that is why he was cast. And anyway, Daisy Ridley is a great example, and maybe even the foremost example, if not the seminal one, of that Star Wars heroic quality. She is excellent. So they get on the Millennium Falcon, which is just lying around.
Yeah, and the second you hear that one's garbage, that they're going to pan over to show you the Falcon. You know.
Yes.
Hi. Question. How does she know how to fly?
We don't know. That's one of many mysteries about her.
Immediately says I'm a pilot, or we have one.
Yeah, she's a pilot.
How?
Well, we really don't know very much about her life, leading up to this.
Presumably,
we don't want to
be a lot better off
been on Jakku.
Yeah, I mean, I think
they may have come and gone a lot, but yeah, it is a decent question. Why? There are a lot of things
really good at it.
Knows how to do, and that might be. There might be a reason for that.
The mysteries of her background and identity that's the question, I guess, of this trilogy, and clearly all of our questions will be answered in episode 9. Kylo Ren has a hissy fit. This fucking guy is pounding the walls, breaking things.
Sorry, hang on, what was that, babe?
She tallies the days.
Oh, she tallies the days she's been on Jakku in the AT-AT.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And she is not familiar, apparently, with the old 4 and then put a slash through it. Yeah. So if she wants to count the days, she's got to count every one of those little scratches.
Well, unless each row is 75 or whatever.
No,
yes, that's it.
It was just, if she started doing that when they left her, wouldn't she have started at the bottom and gone up? Because how could she be that tall when she was that little? It wouldn't be. It would be going up.
But maybe it only represents, like a couple of years. Maybe she's only been on Jakku for a while.
Still, though, would you start at the top and go down?
Maybe she started somewhere else, like, on the opposite wall.
Oh.
But maybe this is the continuation.
Maybe she just, she used to have a big dresser there.
Maybe she got shorter, like old people do.
What?
As you age, you get shorter.
Oh, maybe that's how this race ages. Yeah.
So Harrison Ford, guys.
Yeah, I seriously never ever thought we would see him play Han Solo again, except maybe if someone drugged him and got him on Saturday Night Live. I just didn't think we were going to see that happen. And I think he did the best job you could expect Harrison Ford to do of being sincere as Han Solo again.
Yeah, it's hard to be, forget being objective. It's hard to even be coherent on the subject because it resonates so deeply. Him in that role. I mean, I think when the trailer came out and that Chewie we're home moment happened, I actually think the movie pretty much won everybody over then. Just that shot of the two of them walking into screen.
Yeah, that made it worth at least seeing.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
It's interesting too. So, and then as this story progresses, we get like our principal team of good guys, at least for the first 2 acts of the movie. It's these new people we just met and Han and Chewie, and it's sort of wonderful. It's very interesting and moving that in the same location where Han once dismissed, hokey religions and ancient whatever, now he's the one who tells the new generation of heroes, no, it's true. It's actually all true.
Right. Well, and, you know, I think once again, we're reminded in that scene of just how short the cultural memory is in the Star Wars universe. Like, you know, Luke wasn't that long ago, people. He's a myth. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, they kind of seem to, and part of it could be that news doesn't travel very far.
And when you're kind of as desperate as you are, it seems the people on Jakku are, you're not looking at the news or the politics. You're just trying to survive.
Right.
Finn has been educated by the First Order, so he only knows what they want him to know. And yeah, Rey is an outer rim scavenger. But it also, the idea that Han and Luke and Leia and, you know, our childhood heroes are also heroes in universe, you know, and Rey and Finn and Poe, they idolize these legendary characters in a way that is familiar to Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm.
We have little references to the Kessel Run, you know, all that stuff, all very satisfying. Han sort of taking over the Falcon again and, you know, kicking the tires and looking around. At one point, I guess it's after the whole thing with the Rathtars and that little adventure. Back on the Falcon, Han says to Chewie like grunts something that sounds regretful. And Han says to Chewie, don't say that, you did great, just rest. It's like a nice little friendship moment for them. Han is telling
Han
Chewie.
and Chewie together will never be unadorable.
Yeah.
It's always cute, even when it's stupid.
You'd better get some rest. It's such a buried moment. And the chess game restarts right where it was in episode 4. Not sure about that. Nobody's touched the thing since.
Like that so much. I mean, that to me is one of the areas where I'm like, yeah, you overshot a bit, JJ.
All right, so you guys are questioning that the chessboard works, but you're not questioning the actual ship that's just been sitting there.
Not questioning that it works. Questioning that it picks up.
All the pieces are in the exact same position they were.
I think it would be if nobody turned it on since then. If it was working,
certainly they played it since A New Hope happened.
How you know?
Surely someone has played holo chess in that damn ship in, you know, those decades.
I don't know. All I know is what JJ tells me, and he's told me that it stopped and then it started right there.
Yes.
And if all I know is what JJ tells me, then I do not know a lot. But anyway.
Well, in the interest of what's that?
Rathtars. Let's talk Rathtars for a second.
Yeah, they're kind of gruesome. To me, it was sort of like reading 2 pages of a Han Solo comic book. Like, it's just a little side adventure telling you kind of what Han's been up to and what his life is like these days, and all these various, I guess, crime syndicates that all have his number. And, you know, it's sort of like, yep, that's our Han.
No, you made a really good point when we were watching it, that this character that we've never met before, who's like the head of this crime syndicate, gets to say lines like, "You're dead, Solo," and like, you know, like all that.
Yeah, inform the First Order that Han Solo has the Millennium Falcon.
Why didn't you tell that to Kanja Club? And then they show up and you're like, oh my God, like this guy gets to treat Han Solo like shit, and we've never seen him before. It's just this actor gets to do that.
It was like when he
got
to
like
the
getting
set.
that part and being like, I only got 5 lines. Oh, but
Yeah,
You mentioned
exactly.
getting that part and being like, oh my God, I pretended to be Scottish. Now I have to learn it.
Well, it's the kind of thing, if you had a Brooklyn accent, it just wouldn't be as...
Why don't you tell Kanja Club? The Bronx, I guess.
So in an effort to further the goals of the resistance, they have to go visit a lady named Maz Kanata, who operates a tribute to the Mos Eisley Cantina.
Yeah. Can I make a comment? Like this is, I think, maybe for me the most egregious, you know, J.J. Abrams Star Wars fan bukkake that is in this movie. You know, again, it's the Mos Eisley Cantina, but not exactly. But it's not really its own thing enough to feel justified. The music is even like off-brand cantina music. And to really kind of drive the point home, we follow that Wolfman in at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of the characters that was removed in the special edition, and people really missed the Wolfman guy. So, having lots of him there was a way of saying, we like the original Star Wars, you guys. We really like it. And for me, it was just a little too blatant.
I feel like it was a little like it's going to sound worse than it is, an Applebee's or a Chili's compared to the original Cantina. Or like it was like an TGIF Fridays or whatever. Like it was a little too big, a little too clean, a little too like, open, and it didn't seem dark and cavernous and scary. It just seemed kind of like
I didn't find the creature design as interesting as the Cantina. But what I do love is what follows, which is Maz Kanata.
I was going to say, but how do you feel about Maz?
I love me some Maz, and also especially once I realized that she's the Lady in the Lake. This is where we get some actual mythology in this movie. That we've got the Lady in the Lake delivering the sword.
Interesting. That is interesting.
The fact that she is this operates this place makes her an interesting character. She plays a role that we would kind of associate with a Yoda-like older Jedi character, but she's not that. She's this businesswoman. She's a little bit like Rick Blaine in Casablanca. She operates this water hole where transients stop in the midst of their adventures. I sort of feel like, it's obviously a nod to the Cantina, and I don't mind your suggestion, Marc-Anthony, that if you were going to do it, you should have figured out a way to make it different enough to justify it. Maybe in episode 8, the casino on Canto Bight is a similar kind of sequence.
That is how I like that rendering.
It has its own kind of difference. But I also feel like, there's going to be a scene like that because it's part of the formula here. And, I don't mind that scene. It doesn't feel as iconic as the Cantina because, of course, it doesn't, But I do note that the music in the scene in this watering hole was written by Lin-Manuel Hamilton.
Oh,
that young man.
Talented.
I saw that show.
Did you? I didn't.
I am not normally a big fan of the rappers, but that young man, I love him. I want to pinch his cheeks.
I can't. My ears can't take the rapping, so I haven't gone to the show. But my granddaughter went to the show, and she said Manuel Hamilton was just her cup of tea.
It's very different when it's George Washington.
Rapping?
Yes.
I didn't know they did that. I thought it was like puppets. But apparently it's this real George Washington. He's very tall. Anyway.
We get a scene of Kylo Ren being Mr. Brooding Angry Boy with Darth Vader's
Kylo Ren
mask.
drinking from Kylo Ren today, by the way.
Oh, I have Kylo Ren up on the shelf where Noah is.
Galaxy.
I have Diet Coke. Darth Vader's mask.
I really like Kylo Ren's tantrums. It's the sort of thing that I think was a big risk to take, but it worked.
He needs to be young. You need to see how young and immature he is. You need to see how hurt he is. And, Anakin, once he became Vader, he was so hurt before that, like there was nothing that was going to hurt him anymore. And he was just this very staid guy. But, Ben has been hurt so much that he's like this boy.
I feel like Kylo is in many ways a stand-in for original trilogy fans.
Yeah. Nice.
He really wants everything to be a certain way. And he was very hurt by what happened recently.
And he spends way too much time on his hair.
Oh.
Did we get a bingo?
Ilo's hair. We have a bingo.
Woo!
What we do here on Faces of Stone, Star Wars edition, is I have a bunch of index cards spread around me, and if anybody says what's on the index card besides me, they get a bingo. So Noah just got one. Pretty obvious one, but.
I think the in a movie that is full of familiar things and revamped or recycled ideas, there are novel things about Kylo Ren's character and Rey's character that keep things fresh. The villain, who is also this kind of angry, raging teenager, is a sort of complement to the heroine, who is always rejecting the chivalry of her male counterpart.
Yeah, he's kind of an incel, and let's not forget that, you know, he's also, there's a bit of white supremacy in there too. I mean, he literally has a flaming cross for a sword.
Oh yeah,
So
that's a good point. Yeah.
He also, I don't think that sword. I mean, you cut your hand off.
yeah, it is the stupidest design
It has this, and it has the hilt. So if you want like that, even.
My understanding is that the reason it's like that is because he has a what was it? What's Kylo's lightsaber? He hurt the crystal somehow.
Yeah, like he didn't have a pure crystal or something. But why shooting out the sides?
But that's because it's an unstable crystal. He has to vent it because it can't make one blade. It's too chaotic. So he vents it on the side to give a little less power to the main blade so that it can exist, I guess.
Well, he can't do that awesome thing with swords that people do where they like.
Yeah, you can't do the little spinny thing. Yeah.
No, you gotta keep it straight out there.
He says in their big duel scene, he says, "I can't do the spinny thing."
No, I can't do the spinny thing.
So speaking of lightsabers, in the basement at Maz's, Rey is drawn to, by the sound of a crying child, she's drawn to a box. She opens it and touches the Skywalker lightsaber, which is inside. And let's talk about this vision she has a little bit.
So prior to the vision, or is it during the vision that we hear Kenobi's voice say Rey?
During the, yeah.
We hear, and I feel like the child voices I thought might have been younglings. They're because this is the lightsaber that killed all of the Jedi. That killed the younglings. That Anakin killed the.
Yeah, that's true. It could very well be that, or it could be. I kind of heard it as the voice of Rey herself, you know, in her early abandonment or whatever that story is. But that's an interesting thought that it could be Jedi, a ghost echo of Jedi younglings slain by Anakin. We hear a voice that sounds a little Snoky, but who knows, that says, "Quiet, girl."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I thought that was What's His Nuts that was played by Simon Pegg. The
yes.
Three-quarters portions. I thought it was
her hand away. Yeah, that's who it is.
You're right. It does sound like her, like him. We see a little bit of
we see her, like there's a ship leaving and she's being pulled away. I think it's his hand pulling her.
It is. Can we talk about that bread?
I do love the bread that blooms from there.
It's one of my favorite special effects I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's great.
I love it.
It's really interesting. But if you got 400 portions of that, I mean, maybe it's not bread. Maybe it tastes like something. But why would you want 400 anyway?
Yeah.
Well, you could live off it for a while,
I guess. But she also has greens, which is odd because where does she get these greens? Anyway, I'm very into the meals these people.
She goes to the oldies.
She goes to the green screen.
I want to question, where did Maz get this lightsaber? I think, that's certainly a question.
For another time.
Yeah, it is for another. No, it is for now. Now is the time to answer that question, Maz.
I wouldn't have minded.
As far as I can think of, I think the only person who could have gotten it from Bespin would have to be Vader. I feel like he could sense it and he went back. I guess Luke could have gone back to Cloud City to recover it somehow, but I would assume that Vader got it. Because otherwise Luke would have given it to Maz, I guess, and then disappeared? I don't know. Did she know Luke?
Luke wouldn't have, I mean, if he was, well. So wait a minute, though. The lightsaber was wherever Luke was training all his Jedi friends, little Jedi.
No. The lightsaber, he lost that on Cloud City when Vader cut his hand off.
Right.
It fell down the tubes. He made a new lightsaber for Return of the Jedi.
Right. So that's the lightsaber we're talking about? Or are we talking about the one that fell down in Cloud City?
The one that fell down Cloud City is the one that Maz has. It was Anakin's lightsaber.
The one that Obi-Wan picked up after cutting off Anakin's legs.
Right after Anakin had only a torso left and was screaming, "I hate you, please give my lightsaber
to my son when he's old enough."
When he's old enough.
I have no legs. I'm not going to be able to tell him.
A couple of other things that happen in Rey's vision. We hear Vader breath. I believe there's a Yoda voice in there, although I can't really make out any words. We hear some
I hear
Yoda.
It too. I can't quite make out any words. I've rewound it and listened to it a few times. I'm sure someone is confident that they know what's there, but I'm not.
we see a little flash forward to the duel in the snow that'll happen later in this movie. And we also see a figure who is obviously Luke Skywalker putting his mechanical hand on R2's head, which we later learn is, we'll see that from another angle in The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
It's the night that Kylo Ren and Luke betray each other, let's say. We also hear a voice say, we see Kylo Ren with a group of people who I assume are the Knights of Ren. And we hear a voice say at the end, whisper, "These are the first steps."
Yeah.
This little sequence is obviously a key to this whole thing, and I assume episode 9 will deal with some of this in some way.
I think we'll surely see the Knights of Ren in episode 9. That's gotta happen.
That's confirmed, I think.
He's become the supreme leader. You know, when he said the supreme leader is dead, long live the supreme leader. That's one of my favorite parts. I'm skipping.
Yeah, that is a lot of fun.
In episode 8, yeah.
Yeah, I'm skipping a lot there. Let's go.
Maz and Ray, any final thoughts on? Lupita Nyong'o. It's a great.
Yeah, aside from being possibly the most beautiful woman in the world.
Nobody ever asks me who the most beautiful woman in Hollywood is, but the answer is Amanda Sisk, then Lupita Nyong'o. And her motion capture performance as Maz is quite good too. She's surprisingly timeless. This is like this ageless character. She seems sort of ancient in some way, but also very...
well, she is 1,000 years old, right? So she...
Is that right?
I think she's hung out with Yoda.
And when she starts climbing across the table, he goes,
Yes.
Solo, what's she doing? He goes, I don't know, but it ain't good.
Where's my boyfriend?
I like that Wookiee.
So I really thought she was kind of going to be the Yoda trilogy, but now The Last Jedi, I think it's Luke.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. I do love the way she says, I like that Wookiee.
It's delightful.
So General Hux has his big Nazi scene where he screams. He is really
super Nazi.
It hurts my throat just listening to him. And then the Starkiller base destroys a bunch of planets. The Starkiller base. That's not derivative.
Yeah, I guess I am not totally in hate with the Starkiller base, but I could have done with something different.
To those who already thought it was contrived to have a second Death Star in Return of the Jedi, now we're really going further. But that's what, again, I think it's sort of like, no, that's one of the ingredients here. I don't want to see another Starkiller base in episode 9, but here, okay. If
there is a half-finished Starkiller base.
Yeah, no, we can't have that.
We're all just going to stand up. I'm like, no way. But
the name
bigger than Starkiller base.
Yeah, this is Starkiller Base. This is Moon Shooter Central. But the name Starkiller is a nice reference to the early...
Yeah, Luke drafts. Starkiller was his name in early drafts or notes at least.
Close enough.
And of course, I assume the reason that name was abandoned is because it so clearly sounds evil. And so it's appropriated here.
It works. It works there. I mean, I do enjoy the way that it functions by, taking the energy out of the sun. I find that the way that it fires and then splits apart, for some reason that bugs me a little bit. I don't know why.
I don't understand why they would need to fire it if they had taken the sun away from the planet.
Because they weren't firing at the planet near there. They were firing it across the galaxy to a whole system of planets.
Okay. But wasn't the planet that Maz's was on, that was the planet they were taking the energy from and gonna shoot, right?
No, I don't think so.
It's like it's almost charged, and that's when they shot, and all the Earth moved away, and Kylo and Rey got pulled apart.
Well,
who knows? We'll have to go back.
I do love the beautiful shot of the TIE fighters flying toward the camera with the sun, the big golden sun behind them. It's a beautiful image and very, very Lucas-esque. Putting these machines in natural light and photographing them in a sort of documentary style. Beautiful. Now we get Leia. We meet Leia again. She has her reunion with Han, which is quite lovely and sensitively acted by both actors, and hilariously interrupted by C-3PO.
Yeah, it was great. That's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
The same way he interrupted them when they were having their first kiss.
Yeah,
but we didn't know it was him at first because of the red arm.
Right, you might not recognize.
You're like, oh, it's C-3PO. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, it really feels like old times.
Right. And also, I think it would have been very easy and very tempting, I think, for anyone writing a continuation of the Star Wars story to have Han and Leia be in a, stable yet bickering relationship of some sort, like kind of have a banter, husband and wife banter, but it would be fun and loving. And I liked that they were kind of this broken couple that had drifted apart.
Yeah, it's very touching.
Still cared about each other in an odd way, but there was hurt there.
Well,
Yeah.
like Han says, every time you look at me, you see our son. And even though she says, I don't want to forget him, like, it's true. Like, they just couldn't look at each other anymore without thinking our son is, trying to be Darth Vader.
Both of them do repeatedly and somewhat awkwardly, but I understand the clarifying reason for it. They use the phrase "our son" so often. I saw our son.
Yeah.
It was Snoke who turned our son to the dark side. It's like, we really want to make sure you get this, folks.
Just in case you missed it, folks.
Yeah. I love Chewbacca and the nurse at the Rebel base. That's
that
a great.
nurse is
He was a
great.
stud.
What's
You
that?
must have been so brave.
Yeah, that sounds very scary. And BB-8 pulls the cloth off of R2-D2, and we get to meet him again. C-3PO explains helpfully that R2 has been in low power mode ever since Master Luke went away. I have no gripe here, except that the phrase low power mode feels a little easy somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, he's in low power mode.
How does he have any power at all?
Phrase
for
that
all
you
that?
wouldn't hear in the original Star Wars movie. You wouldn't. I don't think that the concept of low power mode would have quite resonated the way that it does now.
Well,
He's in sleep or standby or something.
right.
Yeah.
Like C-3PO. What did they say about him? If you don't mind, I'm gonna
I'm going to power
shut
down,
for a while.
switch off for a while.
Switch off for a while. Shut down for a while.
Shut down for a while might have been it. But either way, it's kind of suggested that he was turning himself entirely off,
Right.
rather
Well,
than
lights,
idling, as it seems R2 is doing.
Yeah.
Or as my mom might say, piddle farting.
Well, R2's just been piddle farting around.
Yeah.
So Rey captured and confronting Kylo Ren refers to him his mask, and so he takes off his mask, and it's Farrah Fawcett.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! I've had it for so long, and no one's ever said it. Where is it? Oh my god!
Wow. Do you have a bingo card there that says Farrah Fawcett? Wow. We didn't plan this, folks, I promise.
We didn't.
It's in my notes.
It has been sitting here since I think the first time we did this. That's all I'm saying.
It's fun watching Rey discover her ability to use the Force on the Stormtrooper.
Oh, and drop your weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Who, by the way, is played by Daniel Craig.
Oh, is that the one? I know he's in there somewhere.
Yep, that's the one.
Is it his voice too?
I think so, but I mean, he's doing an American accent.
Mm-hmm.
Was he the person who came on set and he said, "Give me a part"?
I don't know. Was he?
I don't know. There's somebody very famous that said, "Give me a part," and I think they did. He was in a crowd scene or something, and then left the next day. I don't know.
I haven't made a close study of it, but I know that the number of like celebrity buried cameos in this movie is vast. I know Kevin Smith is in there somewhere, and lots of original trilogy veterans. So moving along, there is a hastily contrived plan to hit that oscillator with everything we've got.
Yes. Yes.
Seemed hastily derived to me. Seems like it's been planned over and over again for a very long time.
There has been no Galen Urso flaw planted deep within the core of the reactor. This is just, I think that oscillator, if we can hit that with
Well, but when
some of what
Rogue
we've
2
got
comes out, we'll find out that that oscillator was put there specifically by...
in Rogue 2. Yeah. I love the shot of the Millennium Falcon coming through the trees. They fly in low, and the Falcon like just comes flying out of cutting through the tree line of this thickly forested area.
And that, for some reason, that image really made me think of old Star Wars comics, where I feel that specific thing happened often.
Oh, really?
The Falcon crashing on some landscape and often knocking down trees of some kind. So it just, that hit me like that.
It is the kind of thing that seems like it would follow, but it would have been hard to show on film in the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And now we have the moment that Harrison Ford has been arguing for since Empire Strikes Back. Kill me, kill me. The only actor in history who, having a lead role in a blockbuster franchise, took every opportunity to argue that his character should be killed off, specifically that he should sacrifice himself for his friends.
And there is argument to be made that some have said that Kylo did not actually kill Han, that Han triggered the lightsaber in order to save Kylo from having to go to the dark side. Because this way Snoke would think, oh, he's done it, he's done the thing I asked him to do, he's turning dark, but he wouldn't really have done so.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I've come across that theory, but I don't know.
I do have a question about the set. There are railings like all around the top rows and stuff. Why isn't there a railing on this narrow ass, really long span of thing that you have to walk across? It doesn't make any sense. That's a Sigourney Weaver. We shouldn't have to do this thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just why does that even why would you need to cross there?
Couldn't you go around?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a time-honored Star Wars tradition of fighting in perilous areas over vast chasms.
Yes. Like, why do you get to the center? Why are they always donuts?
Yeah.
And you fight there so that,
That's not our car alarm, is it? Okay. Shut up!
Yeah, I don't object to the idea that Han Solo's death, is going to be part of the story. That happens. You're going to lose sympathetic characters, and it is a meaningful death in the storyline. But on first viewing, I was extremely disappointed when it happened because I guess like many others, was holding out hope for a Han and Luke on-screen reunion. And as soon as Han falls off that platform, we know that that's not going to happen. We got a little bit of Han and Leia and some Han and Chewie, and that's great.
We certainly didn't get all of them together again,
right?
In any significant way.
Yeah.
While I agree for that reason, it did sadden me. I kind of appreciated that sadness. I kind of liked that it didn't really get to happen in the way we wanted, and I liked that it was really kind of a surprise that Han ends up being the Obi-Wan Kenobi of this movie.
Yes.
He serves the purpose that Alec Guinness served in the original Star Wars, and I think that's really fitting.
Absolutely. That's very true.
Certainly, because Guinness really was not that into Star Wars, just like Ford is not that into Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked.
Except, well, no, I keep going into the next movie. We watched it just now. We just finished.
Yeah, so did I. So we'll.
I gotta keep going back.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is an example, though, of where this movie doesn't take the what you might call the sort of obvious fan service route and put Han and Luke and Leia and Chewie back on the bridge of the Falcon. It sort of gives you a taste of what you were hoping for in that way, but keeps taking you back to the stark reality depicted elsewhere.
Yes.
So In my notes here it says, it seems like the father will redeem the son as the son redeemed the father in episode 6 at the beginning of this confrontation, you know, like, oh, Han is gonna say, he's trying to rescue his son from the dark side the way Luke rescued his father, who is also, of course, Ben Solo / Kylo Ren's grandfather. But it doesn't happen.
Do you think, I mean, I really like looking at it in that angle, and, you know, considering that prior to the death of Carrie Fisher, the kind of loose plan was to be The Force Awakens will be Han's story, and The Last Jedi will be Luke's story, and then episode 9 will be Leia's story, that it really was supposed to be about. Eventually Leia does redeem her son, and it is that kind of bookend. I think that would be really beautiful, and that seems like maybe what they were aiming towards, but now we don't know if they've had to revise a bit.
I mean, toward the end he gets, oh God, I can't, it's the next movie, never mind.
We get our fight in the woods with Kylo Ren in the snow. Very dramatic sequence. This is our main lightsaber duel for this particular episode. I love, of course, the moment when the Skywalker lightsaber responds to Rey rather than to Kylo Ren. That's a great moment. One of the great moments. The only complaint I have about this sequence is it seems like Finn shouldn't really be able to hold his own against Kylo Ren with a lightsaber for that long.
Yeah. It seems like he should more or less be instantly cut down, maybe block a couple of times, but I don't really buy it. The argument that I've heard in favor of what happens is that Kylo is already injured and isn't really...
Yeah, but Finn's probably never held any sort of sword in his life.
Yeah, he was a janitor.
Well, he may have had, you know what, he could have practiced with, like, the brooms, maybe?
Oh, there we go. Oh, well, that explains it. Thank you, Amanda.
You're welcome.
I
mean, Kylo and Rey pretty much fight to a draw. You know, Rey sort of has the edge when they're separated by a chasm in the land. But, Finn, it seems like a little too much to ask of Finn to last that long. Chewie... Listen, I expect him to do his duty. Of course he's got... We all have to do our duty. When they arrive back at the Rebel base, there's been some controversy. It's been rightfully pointed out that when the Falcon lands, Rey and Leia immediately rush to embrace each other. And Chewie is sort of just off on the side of the frame. Wouldn't Leia and Chewie comfort each other over the loss of Han first?
It seems, it really is odd. And, you know, not just odd, but to the point, like, did no one involved in the making of this film ask about that? You know, just wait a minute. Why aren't Leia and Chewie hugging it out? You know, and Leia barely knows who Rey is.
Yes.
As far as we know.
As far as we know.
If Rey was her daughter.
Agreed, but what? Okay.
I know it doesn't make sense, but I feel in my heart.
So you think that Rey and Kylo are twins?
Yes.
It's not impossible. I mean,
it's not impossible.
I don't know why.
It might be a little too rhymey for me, but it depends on how it's revealed, I guess, whether I could accept that.
I mean, I don't know why they.
But I mean, you know, this is Star Wars, and we're supposed to believe they're twins, and they haven't even accidentally kissed once.
They've had some far more intimate moments than anybody else in this whole movie ever, or series ever have. You know, they're almost pornographic, those scenes where they touch each other's hands and stuff. It's just...
It is a little steamy, yeah.
Jumping ahead. Let's go back again, sorry.
Yes. At one point, she even says, I have felt him, which I didn't even see that.
That was on the cutting room floor.
R2-D2 springs to life, or I suppose enters high power mode. They put the map together. R2 and BB-8 finish the puzzle.
From where does this map come, actually? I think this is a good question.
Let's do it.
It seems unlikely that Luke left a map to himself and he's like, I'm going to keep half of it in you, R2, and then I'm going to give the other half to some old guy.
Well,
and a MacGuffin, I guess.
Maybe Luke did take that piece out of the map so nobody would find him. I don't know why he would give it to Old Man, but
Yeah.
The entire map must represent a little charted area, because that little missing piece wouldn't be enough to. I mean, you could just go to the area around that gap, you know,
Right, and figure how many
figure it out.
in there.
So
Right.
the whole thing has some remoteness and mystery to it.
it's very geometrically cut out as well. I mean, it's like very definite shape that's been cut out of it. So it's not like, I don't know. It also is a throwback, though, to somebody erased the archive memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should have just followed Gravity's silhouette. Did they not go to Youngling Kindergarten? And
The Padawan is right.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Beyond the shades.
Oh, my dear friend, how I've missed you, C-3PO says. And we all dry our eyes while Rey and R2 and Chewie head off to find Luke. And Star Wars movie, for the first time, stops with a genuine cliffhanger. Not just a cliffhanger that has to do with unresolved narrative strands, which has happened in pretty much every movie, but it's a pretty surprising and compelling ending. By this time in the movie, the first time around, we knew, like, I don't think I've seen much Mark Hamill in this film, and it's been 2 hours and 15 minutes, and beautiful. I think it's beautifully done, the way she climbs the steps and holds the lightsaber out, and we just see his troubled face as the last moment.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was a great way to end, and I heard that during the read-throughs, Mark Hamill read the stage directions to make sure that he was a part of the process, despite, you know, not really having scenes with any of these people.
He did. He read them, and it was really interesting. Like, we saw footage of it, and just to hear him saying
and he read them as Joker, I hear. So,
yeah, in the documentary which accompanies the disc or streaming release of Force Awakens, there's some footage from that table read, and it's beautiful. Yeah, they're all sitting there, you know, it's quite just the room full of those people is remarkable in its own right. And yeah, the voice of Mark Hamill says, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and you know, if you don't have chills down your spine, then you're just not into this.
Also, I just want to note that, you know, Rey climbing up to Luke, not only is this, you know, a well-known, like, the master at the top of the mountain kind of thing.
Yes.
You know, pretty normal Asian trope, and but also there were a lot of, in the prequel trilogy, we saw tons and tons of descents. Anakin was always making descents.
Yeah.
Down cliffs and, you know, into depths of things. And Rey seems to be climbing. She seems to be doing a lot more ascending.
What a good point, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, awakening, the Force awakens.
Right.
Arises, rubs its eyes and pours its coffee. And
feels the cold of the floor and says, "Where's my slippers?" The Force hits the sleep button.
The Force snoozes.
Well,
Force needs.
Any concluding thoughts?
I mean,
any wrapping up thoughts on episode 7?
I mean, it's something I'm really glad that it exists. I'm glad that it made a lot of people like Star Wars again. It's not my favorite Star Wars movie, but I think there's a lot of really good stuff in there that I genuinely enjoy.
I like it. I like it better than The Last Jedi.
We're gonna fight. We're gonna fight.
Awesome. Like virtually?
Yeah. Well, you know, we should like get some like Rock'em Sock'em robots that, you know, you've got one side, I've got one side. They're connected through the interwebs or
I bet
whatever.
there's some sort of internet thing that we could buy where if I punched, you would feel it in your face.
So can we talk about the Mandalorian real quick before?
Right. Yeah. Let's move on to a little Mandalorian segment before we wrap this up. As the folks at home will know, Disney has released its own streaming service, which is known as Disney Plus, and it has everything Star Wars, everything Marvel, all of The Simpsons, all of National Geographic, all of Pixar, and also some Disney crap.
It's, I have to admit that when I first, my sister and I shared a login so that we don't have to pay the full price for it, and got Disney Plus up, and I started looking through everything there. I felt like that scene in Addams Family Values where the kids get sent to the Harmony Hut to watch all the cute things.
Right.
And what's his name goes, but it's Disney. That's kind of how I felt. It's like, yeah, all right, you win, Disney. You've put enough things on here that I really do kind of want to watch.
And I think it's relevant to the question of how these new Star Wars movies were going to go. Like, a lot of people were worried, oh, what's Disney going to do with or to Star Wars?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, George Lucas very consciously wanted Disney to own Star Wars because he knew that although Disney itself clearly has a brand and an identity, and the Disney name brand is often, I mean, there's a lot of excellent work under that banner, but it's often not really my thing. But when Disney acquires a property, it tends to take pretty good care of it. Disney has not let terrible things happen with the Muppets or Marvel, or, they've acquired a lot of properties and been fairly responsible stewards of them. I still think it's a little bad that this one giant company owns so much of our culture, but I don't think they do a bad job.
No, it doesn't anger me too much. I agree. I feel pretty much exactly the same way.
So the flagship series on this new streaming service, or at least one of the reasons people felt like they had to have it, is the first live-action Star Wars television series, which is created by Jon Favreau and is called The Mandalorian, and is set 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and therefore, 15 years before Episode 7?
I think it was 25, right?
It's 25 years, but yeah, that sounds right.
Oh, okay.
I will say that I was writing bingo things up until the last minute, and I was just throwing things out of my head, and I could not figure out where this came from, and now I know. I wrote Barbara Mandrell, and I know exactly now because we were talking about The Mandalorian. So I was like, why is that coming out of my head? Fine. Also, I retired one tonight. I know I'm going to keep talking about bingo. I retired one tonight was, I don't know, it just gave me chills because nobody had ever said it. And Noah, you just said that. I'm failing in my job.
What was it that he just said?
Something about, I don't know, it just gave me chills. I expected it to come from you, but.
Okay. But yeah, The Mandalorian did give me chills, by the way.
Yeah, so what did you think of The Mandalorian?
I think it's kind of surprising because I think this show is exactly what the Star Wars fans, to whom I'm usually opinion-wise diametrically opposed, this is exactly what they've been wanting. And if you would have told me that before I watched it, I would have said that I might hate it, but I love it. It is also exactly what I want. And let me tell you some big reasons why. There are some nods in there that are making it very clear that, listen, we love everything about Star Wars, including some of the things considered the worst about Star Wars. So we're going to put them right in your face in delightful ways. So the weapon that the Mandalorian is using is the same weapon that Boba Fett was using in the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Yeah.
And his prey mentions Life Day.
Yes, he does.
From the Star Wars Holiday Special. The mounts that are ridden in the second episode, Blurgs, originally appeared in Ewoks: The Battle for Endor. And in the most recent episode, the canister that all of the payment is in is an ice cream maker that has been modified. Because on Cloud City, when there was an evacuation, there's a scene where if you look carefully, there's a guy running down the hall carrying an ice cream maker.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, ice cream maker guy. Somebody made some toys of ice cream maker guy. Eventually, they were fan-made toys, I think. And ice cream maker guy is kind of this running joke in Star Wars fan community.
Oh wow, I didn't know about this.
We have a fire drill in our home, and we know what to get first. And the ice cream maker, we're taking the Instapot. So.
Well, this is the Star Wars universe. It could be an ice cream maker and Instapot.
Could be. Wow. Could be.
Do you make ice cream with blue milk in the Star Wars universe?
I use the green milk.
Yeah.
So I think that what bothered me and what I like the most about it, and I can't figure it out, is how slow it is. It's so slow. And I kind of love it.
It's very Japanese. It's extremely Japanese. And it's it's also very Western, and it's kind of like really treading that, like, the way that samurai movies and Westerns interplayed with each other over the decades. It's kind of making
it's like not a spaghetti Western, but a ramen Western.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with it. I'm enjoying it. I think it's fine, but maybe just fine to me. I mean, now the character who is has been universally described as Baby Yoda, although couldn't actually be Yoda unless I don't think that's what's going on. It would require a
time travel. I will.
Yeah. But it is a 50-year-old infant of Yoda's species.
Yeah, Masaharu, when I did the math, and that means that he would have been born about 20 years before the Battle of Naboo.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
It will be interesting to see how they account for the history and future of this creature. But it is undeniable. It's just true. This is a ridiculously cute and lovable little character.
Yeah.
And that has definitely kept me. I mean, I'll tune in for that if nothing else.
It's adorable.
He doesn't
very
have
lone
any...
wolf and cub. I mean, it's a reference to that, you know.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have whites around his eyes.
No,
and that's part of what makes him so cute and sweet and helpless looking. He's just those big eyes, and Yoda does.
Like, listening, like, yeah.
Right, Yoda does have whites of his eyes.
I don't even like babies, but I like that baby.
Yoda does have whites in his eyes, and I think Baby Yoda, like when he opens his eyes really wide, you can see the corners. Like as with many dogs and cats, there are whites in there, but mostly you just see big irises.
His race maybe has a third eyelid that they shed when they go through puberty.
I mean, it's like what you said, it's a puppy or something. That's what makes it so.
So one little thing that I'm not sure if this actually is a thing, but the doctor that is with Werner Herzog and is trying to get the asset.
Yeah.
His uniform looks, color palette wise, a lot like Kamino uniforms. And he has a patch on his arm that might be the Kaminoan symbol.
Because they're gonna clone him.
I don't know. That seems to be a possibility.
I mean, it does seem like, Werner Herzog with these kind of battered, stormtroopers, this seems to be the remnants of the Empire, which will develop into the First Order, I suppose. And if Episode 9 is about to tell us that Palpatine is actually lying in wait somehow for some kind of return, I don't know that this is the case, but it seems like, it's reasonable to infer that the asset being this force-rich Yoda baby, they may want this asset so badly because it has something to do with somehow, I don't know, like it starts to feel a little bit Voldemort-y, like Palpatine needs the power from this baby.
Force-rich Yoda baby is my favorite.
I would like you to say that again, please.
I really...
Force-rich Yoda baby?
That's the name of our band.
Yeah, we'll see. Actually, the fact that it is a Disney property ultimately makes me feel fairly confident that we're not going to have to see anything terrible happen to Baby Yoda, which I couldn't handle.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be endangered here and there, but I don't think he'll cry at some points, I'm sure.
Yeah, but I'm glad it's out there. I sometimes when watching it, my thought is, I'm glad these things can exist, and if people are enjoying them, great. But I don't know, for me, so much of it is about the John Williams music, the opening crawl, all the trademarks of the Star Wars movies.
I dig those things too, but I'm loving this take, and I think it might be my favorite. It definitely is my favorite non-John Williams score for Star Wars. It's
an interesting, different approach,
and it really works with this kind of story.
Yeah,
it's just really dark and really slow, and it's a lot of that guy walking, but also not the voice that I would expect from him. But just,
oh, you said voice. I thought you said waist. I was like, what you?
I thought he'd have a much bigger,
I thought he'd be more like,
like a corset.
belly or something.
No, his voice is not nearly as. It actually has some emotion to it, some levels to it, and we're used to.
And I mean, I think it's also capitalizing on something that's very Star Wars, which is there's a mask here. You don't know exactly what's under there, and we're going to keep it that way for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So today we watched the most recent one, and she says, "Have you ever taken your helmet off?" And he says, "No."
Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, how do you wash your face? How do you wash your hair? What's under there? Have you grown?
Mandalorian helmets have this whole cleaning system in there. It's actually healthier for your skin to be wearing a Mandalorian helmet than not.
It's like a car wash.
Yeah.
It's like a car wash. You really have to close your eyes when those soap jets kick in because you can really hurt yourself.
Because Mandalorian is not a race, right?
When they say, "Have you ever taken your helmet off?" they mean in front of someone. It could be that they take it off.
Because they're not a race. They're I want to be a Mandalorian, or are they a race?
No, they come from a system of planets. So they're Mandalore being the core planet there, and then there's a few others that are considered Mandalorian planets, but they're a kind of a tribal culture that is centered in one area.
So what if you don't want to be a bounty hunter? Do they kick you out?
You don't have to be a bounty hunter. It's just they're a warrior culture, and so that's one of the professions that is, popular.
I certainly do want the Mandalorian to be successful because I want that Obi-Wan series.
Yeah, me too.
And I don't want to have a thing where there was going to be an Obi-Wan movie until Solo disappointed at the box office. So I thought, oh boy, if people don't love The Mandalorian, who knows what'll happen to those 10 scripts Ewan McGregor talked about.
I would very much like to see Ewan McGregor take up the Kenobi mantle again. He was delightful as that character, and I'd like to see an extended take on that.
Yeah, and I'd like to see more of that chapter of the story too, Obi-Wan's exile on Tatooine in the years before Episode 4, but after Episode 3. I'm looking forward to that one a lot.
I want to hear him say, "Oh, hello," when he jumps down behind somebody.
Hello there.
Hello there. Yeah, that's it. Hello there.
I also I like the way, for me, this works a lot better than the kind of fan service that you have in The Force Awakens. I like that we got a little deeper look into the Jawas.
The thing with the egg was nice and weird.
Yeah, they're just completely bizarre little rat creatures or whatever they are. And then they're obsessed with this egg that I assume gets them high.
It's another example of a kind of stand-in for Tatooine,
But we don't know that wasn't Tatooine.
Oh.
It's the planet is never named, and it could be, it's certainly not Mos Eisley, but it could be another settlement on Tatooine. We don't know for sure.
That's true, because it is a big planet, and we are familiar with Mos Eisley and Mos Espa, but there's also Mos Hart.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe it's time maybe this is the part of the show where we say, thanks for watching Faces of Stone. You can tune in very, very shortly for the next episode, in which we discuss the next episode, Episode 8, The Last Jedi. That will be hosted by Mr. Marc-Anthony Macon. You can find our complete schedule and stuff at facesofstone.space. And on social media, you can find us. You know who we are. Come on. I would like to say, as we just wrap this up, join us again real soon for Faces of Stone.